Hey guys, it's Jerry S and what's up? If you've seen my preview for this gun, I did say at the end of the video that I'll have some more videos on the way, so here they are. This will most likely be a two-part video, and it will be, both parts will be very in-depth, so if you're not into really in-depth stuff about firearms, especially a more complicated one like this, then this probably is not the video for you. But that said, I'm going to go straight into it. So in this video we're going to cover pretty much all the main stuff about this. This is of course an MG42/53. Most of all the information in this still applies to the original. So first I will tell you the difference between the MG42 and the M53, which is what this is, just so in case anyone's not familiar with the two different guns and their differences between them. This particular one is a Yugoslavian produced firearm. You can see on top there you have a Yugo crest. I don't really have the best lighting here, so apologies for that, but that's the Yugo crest there. Now the way you can tell that these are dated is you'll see it has 6 flames inside the Yugo crest there. That means that this is a post-63 produced firearm. Now these were generally post-war firearms made off the old Nazi abandoned machinery, which was of course left intact by the retreating Nazi army as they left Yugoslavia during the war when they were being pushed back into Germany. So a lot of the machinery they left behind, the Yugoslavians continued to use for many years afterwards, and some German MG42s that were captured by the Yugoslavians during the war were actually put into service with the Yugoslav People's Army after the war as MG42/53s. So this one is technically an M53, being that it's a post-63, but there is almost no actual difference between this and the wartime MG42. The most noticeable external difference, which a lot of people wouldn't even spot normally, is this here. You can probably see there, it looks like there's a slit which hasn't been cut out. On the MG42 this is cut out for the anti-aircraft spider sight, but on here it's absent. Not quite sure why they decided to get rid of that feature, but that's one of the main differences anyway. The other difference was a slightly lower rate of fire, averaging between 1050 to about 1200 rounds per minute. It sometimes went below 1000 rounds per minute. So that's basically the main differences. Everything else externally and internally is pretty much the same. They all operate the same way, so that's why this sort of counts for that as well. To the left of the gun there's some accessories. I've got the ammunition to make my Mauser, starter tab, and the Gurt-Trommel 50 round drum magazine. I'll explain more about all three of these later. And also I've got some other rounds to compare it to what was also being used by the Allies and the Russians at the time. So I'll do a big segment on all that later on. So first thing I'll go into really is how this gun came about. If you've watched enough documentaries, then you know what a fearsome gun this is. The reason it mainly came about is due to the MG34. Now the Germans were using the MG34 from about 1934 to 1945 to the end of the war. But it was having problems, although it was probably the first true general purpose machine gun or universal machine guns, meaning it could be used as a light machine gun or a heavy machine gun on a tripod. Being the light machine gun often have some sort of drum feed option with less ammunition. Being on the tripod it could be fed by a loose belt of ammo which could be linked to several others. That'll give you a lot more accuracy. Now I don't have the tripod for this, so I can't show you that, but you can sort of see it on the internet all over the place. So the MG34 was a great gun. The only trouble is it wasn't the most reliable thing in the world. It was quite susceptible to dirt, particularly in the African sands and the dirt and the mud and the snow on the Eastern Front. Being it was quite a tight tolerance weapon, it didn't take an awful lot to sort of gum it up. Now I'm not sure if the MG34 actually has a dust cover, it probably does. But the thing on the MG42, to prevent that, you can see this dust cover here, it's closed at the moment. It pops out when you cock the action. This example, by the way, is actually all fully working parts, in case anyone was wondering, so I can show you that later on. But anyway, back to the 34. Another big con with the 34 is it took about 150 man-hours to produce it, at the cost of 327 Reichmarks. Now that was quite expensive, especially during the time of war. It was also all machined, it took a lot more materials to produce than the MG42, which is this. So they needed something that could be produced quicker, was more reliable and was a bit more soldier friendly and simpler in the field. The MG34 internally especially was quite overcomplicated. I think the bolt assembly had about 12 pieces alone, so there was quite a lot of pieces to get lost. Which is a similar story with this gun, but it was a little bit simpler internally and more reliable mechanism overall. And this gun is a lot less susceptible to dirt. Still can have problems, but they actually found the prototypes were actually a lot more reliable than the 34. So I think it was about 1938, 1939 they really wanted to find a replacement for the MG34. So they went to many different companies. They went to 3 different companies in general and asked them to submit designs. They went to Gosfors AG, Rheinmetall Borsig, Stubgen and a few others I think, and asked them to submit designs which they could use to replace the MG34 as the standard general purpose machine gun of the German army at the time. After some testing, they found that the design submitted by Gosfors was actually the most reliable, since it used a new sort of locking mechanism. We'll go into all the details later. But the other 2 were gas actuated. So this proved to be the most reliable and the best design, which entered a brief prototype stage termed the MG39. Now they believe because it was the best design they decided to put it in for further testing. So in 1941 they submitted about 1,500 of the prototypes to be used by select units of the Wehrmacht, which were termed the MG39-41. And they proved to be very successful. Good feedback, so eventually in 1942 they began to mass produce it, and that's when the legend was born. Adopted into service in 1942, MG42, Maschinengewehr 42, essentially. So that's how that came about in the end. They found the new gun was of course a lot more reliable. It could be produced at a lower cost of 250 Reichsmarks per piece and 75 man-hours, which was an amazing 50% reduction over the 150 man-hours to produce the MG34. So they could produce 2 of these for every MG34 running off the production line, and for about 27% decrease in the price per item, per gun, basically. So to produce the gun, many factories went out in Germany, were given contracts to produce it. Gosfors AG, Rheinmetall Borsig, Stubgen, Mauserwerk, Gustloffwerk and many others. Those are all the factories mainly splitting these out. By the end of the war they'd actually produced about 400,000 of them, which was not bad at all. Another reason why they could produce this gun so fast is, you probably noticed if you look at the receiver, it's quite a rectangular looking appearance. Whereas the MG34 was all machined and such, it was very time consuming. This is mainly made of stamped sheet steel, rolled, stamped and welded, so it's a lot quicker. Now you can probably actually see, if I go around the left side of the gun, you might just be able to see, I probably won't know if you tell on this light, especially up here, you can see the weld lines there. It's not bad at all really. I mean, I don't know if the actual German quality is a better external finish. I mean, these guns are post-war, so whether that means they are better materials, I'm not sure. But they were made a lot cheaper than the MG34, but not quite as high quality alloy as well, which only slightly decreased during the war as Germany was experiencing a shortage of materials due to the Allied air raids. But because it was a fairly simple gun to make, very rectangular in appearance, they could spit them out pretty damn fast. Yeah, so they could really make a lot of these pretty quick, a lot faster than the MG34, which was a massive bonus. But that alone wasn't really the reason why this gun was so successful. And that's where we go on to our next segment, which will probably be its effect in battle. Now, this gun is considered by many experts, now I'm not being biased at all, in case any of you think I am, considered by many experts as probably one of the greatest machine gun designs ever. Mainly because it is so simple and it's very reliable in battle if maintained properly, but also because of internally it's very well designed internally. Now the reason for that being, it can produce a stunning volume of fire which averages about 1200 to 1500 rounds per minute. So that's incredibly fast. Even now that's still pretty fast, but during the war that was a lot faster than the standard 600 to 800 rounds of guns like the British Bren, the Vickers, the American Browning 1919 and 1917 machine guns, which typically fired about 600 rounds per minute. So this thing, with a medium weight bolt, you can use different weight bolts in it. Now the bolt assembly itself in this one is what I believe to be a medium one. Sorry, I had to put the camera down so can't open it when I've got one hand. There's the bolt assembly. I will field strip this later so you can see all the parts. But this has got the medium weight bolt in it. It's quite a heavy bolt, to be honest. It's locked in the breech at the moment. But there are many different weight bolts. The heaviest bolt will give you about 900 rounds per minute. The medium weight, which is apparently the most common, will give you about 1200, and the lightest about 1500. Even the MG42, which was never actually produced, was rumoured to actually go up to 850. Sorry, 1850, which is pretty crazy, really. Good job they never made it. Probably wouldn't have turned out too well for our boys. But even this didn't turn out too well for our boys. It's probably one of the most feared weapons of the entire war, mainly because it could produce such a terrifying sound and also terrifying effect. Now the Americans, you've probably heard about this if you've researched this enough, but I'll mention it anyway. The Americans actually developed a special training film to try and fight back the trauma of US, recruits facing this gun in battle. They coined up a phrase which is, "Its bark is worse than its bite." It was actually the complete opposite. Although this gun did sound like someone ripping a huge piece of canvas, because its fire rate was so high you could barely hear the report between the rounds, which is why the Americans termed it Hitler's buzzsaw, which is the nickname they came for it. The British nicknamed it the Spandau. The Russians referred to it as the Linoleum Ripper, since it did sort of make that kind of sound, a bit like someone burping, because it has such a high rate of fire. So the sound itself was very terrifying, never mind everything else. But the actual devastation this would put out, seeing as it is firing 8mm Mauser at around 20 rounds per second. Now here's the ammo. I'll lay this out so you can see it. Is a big round, larger than our modern day 7.62 NATO. Just for comparison, I will find you a 223 round out of the ammo bag next to me. Here's a 223 next to the German 7.92 round. So you can really see the size has a lot decreased. Now this is commonly used in M249 and everything alongside the Mag 58 of today. Sort of in the standard machine guns and that, but you can really see that this was like the basic standard size round for an LMG, even an LMG back in the time of World War II. So the round size has really decreased at the present day. But when it's this gun is spitting out about 20 to 25 of these per second, you don't even have to be in the gun's sights for long. You're going to get hit multiple times if it's close range. These rounds are truly devastating, really, to be honest, especially when you're shooting that many per second. The actual rounds themselves, though, I'll talk about those a bit later on, but I'll leave them there for now. So because this gun could fire so fast, it was very effective at mowing down a lot of people very quickly with a trained gun crew. But its biggest advantage being its rate of fire, well, its firepower in general, was also its biggest con. For two reasons. A, if this was a real bout, it would fire this in about 2¼ seconds. No problem. But that's also, it is its problem, like I just said. It does fire a lot of ammo and therefore requires a lot of ammo supply to keep it running. The barrel would also overheat very quickly. This gun does have interchangeable barrels. By pushing on this is the barrel door. It's welded on there, unfortunately, but I'd have the bolt back anyway, but you normally would put your hand on this. One of the other guys in the gun team, which is typically a team of 3, a shooter, an ammo loader and a spotter, the shooter itself would probably sort of smack this 45-degree angle and the whole breech end of the barrel swings out. They usually issued an asbestos mitten to the gun crews to help remove the barrel, obviously because it's very hot, it exceeds very high temperatures. They prohibited in the German manual from firing more than 250 rounds in a single burst, and roughly 350 rounds or less per minute to decrease barrel wear and burning all the lube off the internals too damn fast if you're just firing it recklessly for minutes. So because of that, it did require a lot of guys to lug the ammo around. The standard machine gun platoon of the Germans, which I can't remember, is 30 something men, same as the Americans, they needed an additional 8 guys to lug the extra ammunition around. This is quite a heavy round as well, so that also made it even worse to carry around, because it's not like you're carrying 5.56 or something. It's a lot of weight to be carrying about. I just realised we've gone over 15 minutes, so we'll continue going on about this gun in part 2. So I'll see you in part 2, I guess. I don't want to make these too long each time, so just click on the next part. Thanks for watching this one.